What is the genre today that really connects to science?
The one genre that relies on technology.
Come on! It's hip-hop. Science has never ever existed in all of history without culture, and especially without music. To the ancient Greeks, they were the same thing. Music was a part of science. And if you ask, what's the musical genre that expresses the way science is today, the way technology is today, the way scientists have to think, the way our culture works in science, it's hip-hop. Hip-hop is the recombinant art form. Hip-hop is the inclusive art form. Hip-hop is the technical art form. So, to me, science without hip-hop, people might not recognize this, but I'm not even sure it would be happening in the same way. You do not get scientific process. If you go back to the very start of science, which, according to some, is in ancient Greece, but no matter what you choose as the starting point, you're going to see that science and music were the same thing. It doesn't make sense to have science outside of culture. You need culture for science because people do science and people understand the world through culture. And if you ask, what is the genre today that really connects to science, that nurtures science, that corresponds to science, it's hip-hop.
So what we are about to do right now for the Universal Hip Hop Museum, keep it going. We got Brother Jaron on his ancient flute. I go by the name of the man we all know and love, Kwame. Scientist of sound, mathematically putting it down. And what we're about to do is we're about to do a little experiment with these ancient instruments and some technology. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna just drop a joint and let's see how it feels. First with the claps. Now, yeah. Let's go. Come on. Now when this beat drops, Brother Jaron, I want you to switch to the first computer instrument. I don't remember the names of these things. But if you feel this groove that I'm rocking right now, just bop your heads one time. If you feel this groove that I'm bouncing right now, just bop your heads two times. Now let's go now. Let's go, come on. Now let's bounce now. Let's go, come on. Now let's bounce now. Let's go, come on. And when this beat drops, we gonna let it go. Let's go now. Let's go, come on. Let's go now. Let's go, bounce. One time, two times, let's go, let's go, three times, now bring this boom in. I think we should really care about hip hop and science for a lot of different reasons. One of the things that I personally care about is the fact that I am sitting next to you and I'm learning at the same time as teaching. Something that you said was very important, that the genre of hip hop is the one genre, musical genre that relies on technology. Never thought of that. And that's 1000% true. And I think hip hop and science, as Jaron was saying, definitely go together and even further, we're always experimenting. We're always trying to figure out a new way to do things, or we're trying to figure out a quicker way to do things, or a cooler way to do things. And to me, that's science. To me, that is the infinite experiment that we always have to sit in front of. When you see this studio behind us, it is no different for me as a science lab in another type of field of science. And we're dealing with sound waves, we're dealing with different connectors and things like that. So I think this is a very they're married. They're very interconnected. So for me, the biggest thing the biggest innovative thing for hip hop isn't some big piece of equipment. It isn't some great, new drum machine out of the sky or anything. For me, it's you can do so much with your phone. If you're young and you're just trying to get your things together and you don't have $5 million for a studio, you have your phone. You can record in your phone. You can make music in your phone. You can shoot the video in your phone. You can edit in your phone. You can now distribute the music in a mass level, all from your device. So I think, to me, that's the most incredible innovation that any genre can acquire, and especially hip hop.
This one I really like a lot. It's called Can. It's from Laos. And the strange thing about this is you could call it the first computer ever, or at least the first digital number. Because what happened is these things were traded across what used to be called the Silk Route in ancient times. The ancient Greeks got them. The Romans made a giant version called a hydraulis that they used to accompany the fights in the Colosseum. Then those were so big that they couldn't operate them by hand, so they had these planks operated by slaves. That evolved into the keyboard. So that turned into the organ and the piano and all that. The piano, very early on, had a player mechanism, and those early player mechanisms around the time of Mozart improvised a little bit, and that inspired somebody to make a player piano roll that would drive fabric creation. That was called the jacquard loom. That inspired somebody named Babbage to make a programmable calculator, and that turned into the computer. So this is the first computer. To me, hip-hop is the first art form to come along that demonstrates how people can stay people when surrounded by technology. And I can't overstate that enough. And that is the primary challenge for our civilization. It's our primary challenge for technology. It's our primary challenge in science, because there's a danger that if we get it a little wrong, that we start to make ourselves obsolete, that we start to become anti-human. And honestly, you can feel a wave of that coming from the tech world all the time.
Yeah.
And the movies don't give us an answer, because the movies just show us these dystopian worlds where people are swallowed by technology. Hip-hop shows us something different. Hip-hop says, surrounded by technology, highly technical, but person in the center. We're not giving up the human here. It's all about the human. There hasn't been a wave of artificial hip-hop artists. I'm sure there's some commercial interests who'd love to see that. But
and that's the thing. Like, I was reading up recently that they're trying to develop an AI to produce hip-hop and to become, like, as a hip-hop artist, a AI, a bot or whatever you want to call it. That's a slippery slope, because if you're constructing an algorithm or whatever to become a hip hop artist, it's not hip hop anymore. Though it sounds like hip hop,
that's it.
It's not hip hop anymore, because it's now hip hop is a culmination of your life experience or the life experiences around you. That's how you make it. So if you're just constructing an AI, you're constructing false experiences or fabricated experience or exaggerated experiences.
Well, I'll tell you what I've always thought about this question in general is the greatest joy of virtual reality is the moment you take off the headset and you're back in reality, because for the first time since you were born, your senses are freshened and you perceive reality just a little bit more intensely. And so I, back in the old days, in the 80s, when we were doing early virtual reality, I would always put like a little mineral or a flower or something in front of somebody, and then when they took off the glasses, you could see them see that thing. It's like, oh my God, this thing is like... So in a hip-hop context, one of the core ideas of hip-hop has always been reality. Hip-hop is not about pretending the world is different than it is. Maybe it is for some artists, but that's not... The main thing about hip-hop is this is reality. we might have different feelings about reality, but we're not going to pretend reality isn't reality,
Yeah.
right? And so instead, a lot of people, when they think about hip hop and virtual reality, they say, "Oh, we're going to do this giant three-dimensional maze of like, tagging and urban art, and we're going to we're going to enhance your moves so you can do crazy dancing you couldn't do otherwise, or whatever." Okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but I'm a lot more interested in somebody going into an experience where they construct what they think is real, and then it's compared to reality.
Yeah,
So, for
yeah.
instance, they say, "Well, what do you think it's like these days in the projects? What do you think it's like?" And then they have some interactive thing where they start to make it the way they are, and then, well, this is what it's like. In other words, you can use virtual reality to help people understand their own perception.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times songs, we get our own perceptions based on the song. Now the artists, they're telling you their thoughts, their feelings, their memories, but everybody's gonna perceive it different. Your idea of virtual reality, I think that is cool to have a thing where it's like, okay, how do you perceive it? How do you perceive Harlem? How do you perceive Long Beach? How do you perceive blah blah blah? And then you construct this thing, and then there has to be an A B, and I'm like, no, it's not really that, or I wish it was that, or this could be that, or it's a very interactive thing with that. What you're saying.
I'm going to say something that I feel is true, but it's not easy to say, which is I think our emphasis on science and tech, just diverting so much of society's wealth into science and tech, and focusing so much on kids who are good at it, and focusing so much of education on it, and focusing so much investment in it, and on and on and on, has created a bit of imbalance where everything else feels a little underappreciated in comparison, and we really have a problem. We really have a problem, because if science isn't for people, it's not for anything. It just becomes stupid. And so we have this issue of money effectively going into tech instead of into people, which is totally absurd. I mean, there could be nothing more ridiculous than that idea. So that's my own take on it, and I'm not saying it's the only thing that's happened. I'm not saying it's the only reason. I'm not saying it's the only cause, but I'll say it's something that my community needs to do better at.
We all know that hip hop and all its derivatives is the major influencer of children. Am I saying that hip hop is influencing kids to be violent? No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, if you're only putting out one type of content that influences your children, and then you see the results of those influences in certain types of behavior, you need to put two and two together. It's very simple. If I'm only putting out this stimulus saying that you need to be rich, you need to be beautiful, you need to be powerful, you need to have these things in order to be anything and anyone. Anybody with an influential mind teetering on some sort of depression or any other kind of mental illness, all you're doing is sprinkling the season and putting the oil on that fire. That's all you're doing. No matter how, any way you want to cut it. Because people always are like, well, I'm just telling my story and I'm not a role model, blah, blah. No, whether you are or whether you're not, let's call it what it is. Even if you were a rapper that had a certain type of adult message, you took the time to re-record it in a way that everybody can listen to it. Schools have taken music education out. Schools have taken creative expression out of the curriculum. Let's play football. Let's not creatively express. Let's play basketball. Let's not creatively express. Okay, there's a computer class. What do? Let's play PS5 for 3 hours. And that's computer class, or, that's the extracurricular activity. So here comes tech. Tech develops something I don't know what that something is. Something that we can place into the schools at a low cost, because that's the key. Because everybody's complaining about the cost. We place this in schools at a low cost, and through the influencer, which is hip hop, project other forms of influence in a manner that the kids are going to accept, and not like you're not being like, I'm the rapper and math teacher. It's nothing like that. And I don't know what that is. But there has to be a balance. It has to be a positive versus negative. It can't just be 88% negative, 2% positive, and the rest is just in limbo. So if that long answer that I just gave makes any sense to anybody, that's what I think.
Hold up one time. Hold up one time. Hold up one time. Now, we're going to switch instruments now. We're going to do a little pickpocketing real quick. This is the art of pickpocketing. First you have the distraction. Then we have some action. Let's go. Huh. 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 Where's my woman at? Huh. Huh. Now bring the beat in. This is a small experiment. How we mix technology, science, innovation, future, present, past.
Way people define science is really sterile. It's like a quest for knowledge or something. And if you do that, I think you're not really doing science. I think you have to conceive of science as a form of service. It has to be something we do for each other in order for it to have any focus or direction or to make any sense. We have this, the great thing about science and technology is that they give us more wiggle room. Like they give us more abilities to behave well. They give us more abilities to help each other. They give us more abilities to reduce suffering. But in the abstract, they also do the opposite of all those things. They give us more ways to hurt each other. They give us more ways to ignore each other. They give us more ways to manipulate each other, which is a current giant problem with digital technology. And so, where's that edge? The edge is, are you doing it for people or not? And that's one of the reasons science needs culture. Culture is made of people. And science isn't necessarily, you can do an abstract kind of science that goes off on its own and gets detached. But culture is about people. So science without culture, I think, really has a random chance of becoming cruel instead of helpful. And we've seen that again and again in history. And it's, I think, one of the great dramas of our age, whether we'll get it together or not. This is the drama of climate change. It's the drama of, are we helping people avoid pain or getting them addicted for profit? It's the drama of, are we feeding people or destroying the land so they won't be able to have food in the future? What are we actually up to here? What's going on? And that edge is a cultural edge because it's about people. It's about how we think about each other.
Commercialized hip hop is the sale of trauma. Period.
Right.
We sell trauma. Huh. We sell black trauma for the most part. From the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It was us telling our stories, rising up from our ashes and becoming something greater than. Especially for kids at first in this country and then around the world who were going through the same trauma. The way to get out of the trauma, the way to heal the trauma, and the technology and the science is how you receive these songs, how you receive these images. So it's whether it's through your video screen or whether it's through your device, whether it's whatever it is, that's the technology. So if you're going to sell the trauma, try your best to sell the solution. Try your best to sell the antidote to the trauma. Now, a lot of times an artist expresses their trauma, and as they're expressing, that's how they're learning how to heal, through their expression. Maybe they don't know how to heal, but they know how to express. So they express. Trauma, pain, suffering, blah, 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 blah. But at some point, on the creative side, if I'm going to express my trauma and I'm going to express how I would like to get out of it, hopefully there's a point in time that I can express how I got out of it and how I healed. You know, there's a lot of times where an artist will express their initial trauma, their hopes to be out, then the world sees them out of the trauma, but yet they still express the trauma, you know, no matter what. So I think that on the creative side, us as creatives need to understand, like, you know, people are listening. At some point, whether it's 1 or 1 million, somebody is listening to what we're saying. And we're not just speaking to ourselves, even though we start out speaking to ourselves. We start out self-expressing in order to heal. So figuring out that solution. Technology, science, steps in and delivers that solution. And through, whether it's virtual reality, whether it's through just your speakers on your head, your iPod, your earpods, whatever it is, it's delivering the pain, the solution, which leads to healing. And I think that's just one little sliver of how it can happen.
Do you think there's something going on where the white hip-hop audience wants to hear black suffering, or at least the industry thinks they do, and so they're afraid to let go of that?
I think that it's a mirror into an experience that they do not know.
Mm-hmm.
So you soak it up. It's like, it could be as simple as me watching Star Wars all day long. I absorb it and I learn from it, or I imagine from it. And I think with hip hop, the white audience soaks in an experience that they've never had, only heard about, or they've heard exaggerated, or maybe their parents are like super racist and their parents say one thing about black people, but then their kids go, well, I'm listening to all this, and whatever you're saying, it seems like it's kind of not the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you have all of that, and it's a learning experience. It's soaking, and that's why the even, I can get deeper, but I will. There are more white people in this country than there are black people in this country. So therefore, the white audience will give you 20,000 times more sales than just a strictly black audience. Mm-hmm. That's just 100% statistical fact. Then you have another faction where the black people in the country may not understand. You know, the black people, the disenfranchised black people in this country, we think it's us. We just know about us. We know about our poverty. We know about our trauma. We know about our situation. But we don't ever stop to think that there are other people in other races that are going through the same shit as we are. Mm-hmm. So you have now another white audience that are listening to hip hop and listening to certain artists and going, yo, they go through the same crap as me. Mm. They may be in a project in South Central, or they may be in a project in the Bronx, but I'm in this trailer park in Alabama going through the same exact thing. Mm-hmm. Period. You know, and I may not be going through a racism thing, but I'm definitely going through a classism thing. I'm definitely getting profiled, just like, maybe not exactly like you, but I know the feeling of that. I know the feeling of having nothing. I know the feeling of growing up or waking up knowing that I may not make it through today. I may not make it through the age of 21, and I relate. And then you make it further, take it outside of the white audience, and now take it to the Palestinian audience. take it to the Indian audience, take it to the Pakistani audience in London. You know what I'm saying? Take it to Brixton. Take it. You could take it to Dublin. You could take it to so many different places after a while.
Yeah, Brazil.
Paris. Take it.
Yeah.
Take it to and now you have disenfranchised people, across the globe connecting. And there is science that connects us. There is hip hop that connects us. And it all just turns into one big circle.
So to me, technology doesn't make any sense unless it's for people. And it can't be for people unless the people can take the technology and remake it, turn it into art, turn it into culture, turn it into their expression of their community, right? Otherwise, the technology isn't even born yet. That's my opinion. And so here we are in LA, the center of car culture for the universe. And lowriders are the culture that has taken in the car, remade it, and turned it into expression, right? And so you gotta love it. And it's an amazing transformation, and it's a wonderful creative remaking of what otherwise would just be another consumer culture, right?
I started off doing model cars, lowrider bicycle. Then once I got old enough to get a car, it was Volkswagen Bugs when I first started. That was my thing. But then once I got a lowrider, it's been lowriders ever since. So I've been doing it about 30 years.
Think of any other culture, right? I don't know of any other culture just off the street where a kid could be interested, like you said, starting out with a model car, starting out with just a regular bike and wanting to flip it, and then you graduate to something like that. You graduate to a lowrider.
Like I went to school out here.
Yeah.
Our detention class would be you building your model car.
Exactly.
You would be in detention building your model car at Washington School.
Middle School.
You would be building your model. You wouldn't
Middle
necessarily be in trouble, but you'd still have your hobby while you was in there.
And that's
So you graduated from
that's
each
deep
step.
culture. That's deep
Model
culture,
car,
you know?
bike, lowrider bike,
You would put pennies and quarters in your model car to make it hop higher for the weight in the trunk.
Yep.
to
You
G-body,
would cheat.
to Impalas, to bombs.
You had steps to this, and it wasn't easy.
And then go back into science. That's where it directly connects. You know what I'm saying? Because you're doing that, and you're not even thinking that you're doing that. You're using weight. You're using weight distribution
Science, all
and
over
all
again.
that. Just to,
And I failed science class, by the way.
but you passed science class at the same time.
Because my model car would
You
not
know what I'm
higher.
saying?
Correct.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? You passed at the same time.
Yes, I did.
So yeah, that's dope.
Hydraulic life, I'm gonna put it straight, it's not gang banging, but it's a life. There's everybody from somewhere, but when it comes to this, everything steps. We look at it as real people. We come here every Sunday, every month, we do it. I have 2 kids, I bring them to functions like this. Why? I want them to see this. I want them to step away from gang banging, drugs. Number 1. Why? Let them come have fun, enjoy, eat, hit switches. Why not? You might break something, you're gonna fix it. You have to. Unless you wanna come out the pocket. Don't get me wrong. It's the life we live. And we do, every month we do this. And to me, it's a hobby. I've been doing this since '88. I don't mess with drugs. This is what I do with my money. I spend it on cars. I have fun.
Easy.
Yeah, cruising down the street in
In
my
my
6'4".
I take a lot of comfort in how mysterious the future is, because the present isn't feeling so hopeful at the moment on a lot of dimensions. So the thing is, humanity has somehow gotten through a lot of stuff in the past. And I think, even though some might not agree, I think we have been gradually crawling up and making things a little better, a little more compassionate, a little more reasonable. Not consistently and with a lot of problems still, but somehow that's happened. Despite us being the same immature, selfish, short-sighted people that we are, somehow we've managed. I'm really curious how that's happened. Technology's part of it because it gives us options, but it's not the whole of it. I think somehow, once in a while, people do the right thing, every once in a while, and it's just enough to keep this thing going and this human thing. And I'm really hopeful we'll keep on doing that. I know we need more science to do it. I know we need a better way of getting energy than we have. I know we need better medicine than we have. I know we need a better way of getting fresh water and food than we have. We need a lot of stuff, and there's no way to do it without. You can't just do it by lifestyle. You have to do it with science at this point. There's just so many people and so many things going on. So we need science. It certainly isn't enough, but I have hope.
Humanity as a whole always thinks the future is going to be flying cars and robots and lightsabers and stuff like that. And the future usually just another day next week. You know what I'm saying? We can do things a little bit easier. We can do things a little quicker. But I think for the most part, how, and this is just simple mathematics. What we do in the present shapes our future. And I think so future for hip hop, future for science in hip hop, I just think things are just going to be the same as what they are now. It's just going to be done easier and quicker and more connected. Like, for example, when I was 16 years old and working on an album, I would never think that if I wanted to collaborate with somebody across the globe, that I could just do it right then and there on a screen and everything could just be connected. I would have to ship tapes across seas and wait 2 weeks for their vocals to come back and all this kind of stuff. So things like that. I think that kind of technology, it's going to be much easier to bring the world, the hip hop collective in the world closer. And I think that and we're doing it now. We're pretty much doing it now, but it's going to be more so where more international hip hop will be just as mainstream as local hip hop. We see it now. We see it with Afro beats. We see it with K-pop. We see it with so many different things. And I just think this world is just going to be one. I call it one big mega mall. It's just, we see it. We see it now. Just in general, and it's like it's going to be like that with music, with technology-based music. Now, is that a good thing? That's the question that I want to know. Is that going to be a good thing to be the same everywhere?
It depends on who owns them all.
Yeah.
It really does. It's like if we keep on the present course where you have giant companies that make their money from an attempt at mind control of everybody for hire.
Yeah.
And that's how you connect with people is through a platform like that. Obviously that's not going anywhere good.
Yeah.
It's not the way things have to go. It's not at all. There's no technical reason why it has to be that way. It's just this thing that started to happen, and we can fix it.
Yeah.
Well, just coming into the studio today, we were listening to Boy Genius, and it was really awfully good. It doesn't get old.
Well, you're just saying that because I'm sitting right here.
Yeah, no. I actually really do think that if I think about the spectrum of hip hop artists, I like hip hop that's warm and that feels, that makes me feel like a warm connection with the person, and your work does that. I like Andre 3000 does that. He's got warmth. I like Lizzo these days for somebody who's current. That warmth is just incredible, and I think a lot of artists are afraid that showing that warmth might be misinterpreted as weakness or something. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And so and it's not, of course. In fact, it takes a lot of courage. That's the real authenticity there, is where you're letting through not just your pain, not just your anger, but you're actually getting through to the core, which transcends that, right? And I love it when people do that. I really. So that's my favorite stream of hip hop. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, like I said, it's like picking my favorite hair on my head. It's like it doesn't work. But for sake of question answering, for me, the first things I think about are the songs that made me fall in love with hip hop. So it may not be a current hit record. It may not be something that was super popping in the 90s or whatever. Like a lot of people gravitate to that. For me, it's records like Freedom, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Because what Freedom did for me was I study sound. That's the best way I can put it. And as a child, as a 7-year-old, 6-year-old, I studied all sorts of sound. I studied Stevie Wonder as a child. I studied Ella Fitzgerald as a child. I studied Coltrane as a child. So then I hear Freedom. I hear live instrumentation. I hear live brass. I hear drums. I hear keyboards. But then I hear hip hop at the same time. I hear Melly Mel. And I'm like, yo. You know what I'm saying? My brain explodes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our little experiment for the Hip Hop Museum, the Universal Hip Hop Museum.